Joining us now is Malcolm Nance. He's the Executive Director of the Terror Asymmetrics Project. Mr. Nance, Malcolm, it's really nice to see you again. Thank you for being with us.
Good to see you.
What should we look at in terms of the character of these attacks, the way they were carried out, and what we know about the attackers in terms of trying to make logical guesses about who did it?
Well, Brian made some very good points there about how historically many of these groups do mimic them, attacks of other groups. However, on this specific attack, there are some dynamics in this that do give us indications of groups which could be responsible. We saw the Charlie Hebdo attack earlier this year. The three attackers turned out to be radicalized members of Al-Qaeda of the Arabian Peninsula who were operating from Yemen. And you'll note, and you made a very good point, that it was only, 10 months ago that we had the Charlie Hebdo attacks. Attack of this level of sophistication, even though it may appear to have only involved 6 attackers, is going to take a lot of pre-planning. These people were obviously professionalized, what we call Class 2 terrorists. These are lifelong terrorist professionals. No one can go into a venue and just gun down 150 people while doing almost near perfect reloading drills in such a tense situation without having combat experience under their belt. Combat experience where they have what we call just by jihad, which is the pleasure, the bloodlust of holy war. So for whoever carried out this attack, they operated as a group, they planned as a group, and they did carry this out in a way that the Mumbai attacks were carried out, in what we call a running and gunning attack. And it was initiated by suicide bombers at the stadium, and then you can almost see the path of aggression move on to the second team, which was going to go and move throughout the city and carry out these gun attacks, and then on to the third team, which was going to carry what we call a suicide hostage barricade. And although it looks very similar to the Lashkar-e-Taiba attack in Mumbai, in fact, this is also going to be considered more of a mimic of the Charlie Hebdo attack, but with the added suicide hostage barricade situation, which is more akin to what we see in other parts in the Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa. I don't know who particular did this attack, but a lot of the indications, of the professionalism, the methodology, clearly it's going to come down to one of the 2 global jihadi groups in this world that does this as a living, and that's Al-Qaeda in Iraq. I'm sorry, not Al-Qaeda in Iraq, but Al-Qaeda or one of its affiliates, or Al-Qaeda's newest iteration, which is the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. And all we can do at this point is learn from what's going on for this particular situation and be prepared to understand that they don't have to have any pre-intelligence indicators that are going to give you a tip-off. They don't have to have the chatter that you would usually expect when you're talking about a 6-man team. But they did have a logistics side that has not been found. There is a bomb factory that produced these suicide belts that's going to have to be found. They are going to have some links to, external organizations or people outside of France to get fully automatic weapons and explosives into downtown Paris. These are things that the French police are going to be working internationally with just about every organization in the world to identify who these attackers are and then bring the justice to them.
Malcolm, on that point about the logistics, and forgive my ignorance, but I know you know, when we're talking about suicide bombs, and there may be multiple suicide bombs here, we've got reports now that multiple attackers inside that theater used suicide bombs at the end of that siege. There may have been other suicide bombs outside that stadium when those explosions went off. Is there enough open source information out there about how to effectively build real, working, effective suicide belts and suicide vests that we could expect amateurs to make them and have them work? Do you need special stuff that's hard to find? Are the instructions hard to come by?
The instructions aren't hard to come by. What's hard to come by is the experience of not blowing yourself up in your own homemade bomb factory.
Yeah.
And this is why, you can create plastic explosive using homemade, common items that are found in, old Army field manuals. It's just a question of doing it in such a way that you don't kill yourself. The bomb vest itself is merely just a delivery system. This is what we call a human-born weapon system. Or too much has been made of the phrase chatter and associating that with signals intelligence. I worked at the National Security Agency for a few years, and most of what we see as intelligence chatter is not actually, terrorist one, this is terrorist two. They don't talk to each other that way. What you see is that's called indications, pre-incident indicators, where you see little things that come down, like you have an arms supplier who has just received a shipment of AK-47s, and you captured all but 5 of them. Well, your next question is, where are those 5? Well, that's an indicator. You set that aside and you watch it. You might get telephone communications, communications intelligence, which indicates that something may be going on. You may have somebody else who's running a safe house. But in most of these jihadi organizations, which are Al-Qaeda based, that's the same that you had with Al-Shabaab and you have with ISIS. They are all based on the professionalism of Al-Qaeda as they built it since 1998. These organizations, when they go into actual operations mode, they don't use cell phones. They don't communicate with other people. They cut themselves off, and then they operate as a little, mafioso organization with Omerta. They all know each other. If you capture one, you're going to get them all, but they don't do that. They all intend to die in the attack. So you aren't going to get the kind of intelligence indicators that you might think you're going to get. And as a matter of fact, that absence of communications intelligence, that absence of any indicator, if you have a series of indicators leading up to that, tells you that they've gone into actual operations mode, and you're what we call at the point of failure.
Fascinating. Malcolm Nance, Executive Director of the Terror Asymmetrics Project, and somebody who has been an expert in this field for a very long time. Malcolm, thank you very much for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Joining us now.